There was a time when working hard meant moving forward, when one job could support a family, when the future felt predictable. Today, millions of Americans are doing everything right and still falling behind, not because they failed, but because the system quietly changed. This isn't about laziness. It's not about bad choices. It's about a middle class that's being squeezed from every direction until it almost disappears. In this video, we'll uncover the top 10 signs the American middle class is fading, not through headlines, but through real life. Because if you feel like stability is slipping away, you're not imagining it. Sign 10: downward mobility becoming more common than upward mobility. For most of modern American history, progress followed a predictable direction. Each generation expected to live slightly better than the one before it. Higher income, more stability, more opportunity. That expectation shaped the idea of the American middle class itself. Today, that direction is reversing. Downward mobility, earning less, owning less, and living with less security than one's parents, is becoming increasingly common. Children who grew up in middle-class households now struggle to maintain the same standard of living, even with higher education and longer working hours. This is not a rare exception anymore. It is becoming a pattern. What makes downward mobility so unsettling is how quietly it happens. It doesn't arrive as sudden poverty. It shows up as stalled progress. A college graduate moves back home. A professional delays buying a house indefinitely. A family that once took vacations now avoids emergencies. Life doesn't collapse, but it contracts. The ladder still exists, but the rungs are farther apart. Housing costs, education debt, healthcare expenses, and job instability make climbing harder than it was for previous generations. Meanwhile, safety nets have weakened. One mistake, one illness, or one economic shock can undo years of effort. This shift changes how people think about the future. Ambition becomes cautious. Risk feels dangerous. Instead of striving to move up, people focus on not falling down. That mindset alone marks a fundamental change in middle-class life. Downward mobility also erodes trust. When people do what they were told, study, work, save, and still lose ground, faith in institutions weakens. The system feels less like a pathway and more like a trap. Frustration turns inward, producing shame and silence rather than collective response. Perhaps most troubling is the normalization of decline. Younger generations are told to expect less, accept instability, and adjust their dreams downward. When falling behind becomes expected, the middle class doesn't just shrink, it dissolves. A society defined by downward mobility is no longer a society of opportunity. It is one of survival. And when moving backward becomes more common than moving forward, the disappearance of the middle class is no longer a theory, it's a lived reality. Sign 9: retirement becoming unreachable or uncertain for generations. Retirement represented the final promise of middle-class life. Work hard for decades, contribute steadily, and one day you could stop working with dignity and security. Today, that promise feels increasingly fragile, if not entirely out of reach for millions of Americans. Traditional pensions, once a backbone of middle-class retirement, have nearly disappeared. In their place are individual retirement accounts that depend on consistent contributions, market performance, and financial literacy. For many middle-class workers, contributing enough is simply unrealistic. Rising living costs force people to prioritize immediate survival over long-term planning, leaving retirement savings underfunded or untouched. Even those who save face uncertainty. Market volatility can erase years of progress overnight. Healthcare costs in retirement remain unpredictable and often overwhelming. A single medical issue can consume savings that took decades to build. The fear isn't just about retiring late. It is about running out of money while still alive. As a result, retirement timelines are shifting. People work longer not because they want to, but because they have to. 60s turn into 70s. Full retirement becomes semi-retirement, freelance work, or part-time labor just to cover basic expenses. Rest becomes conditional. This uncertainty also affects younger generations. Many no longer expect to retire at all. The idea of lifelong work has been normalized, not as fulfillment, but as necessity. That expectation quietly lowers standards and reshapes ambition. Planning for the future becomes abstract when the future feels unaffordable. Emotionally, this creates deep anxiety. Retirement was supposed to be a reward, proof that effort mattered. When that reward disappears, the meaning of work itself begins to change. People don't just fear aging. They fear financial vulnerability at a stage of life when recovery is hardest. A middle class without a secure retirement is not truly stable. It is stretched across an entire lifetime with no clear point of relief. When decades of labor no longer guarantee rest or security, the middle class loses one of its defining pillars, and the disappearance becomes impossible to ignore. Sign 8 stable careers replaced by gig work and uncertainty. For much of the 20th century, the American middle class was built on stability. A career wasn't just a job, it was a long-term contract between effort and security. Workers expected steady hours, predictable pay, benefits, and a future that could be planned. That foundation has quietly eroded. Today, stable careers are increasingly replaced by gig work, contract roles, and temporary positions. Flexibility is often marketed as freedom, but for many workers, it feels more like uncertainty. Income fluctuates month to month. Benefits are rare. Paid leave, healthcare, and retirement plans are no longer standard. They're optional, if available at all. This shift moves risk away from institutions and onto individuals. Companies remain agile, while workers absorb instability. A missed week of work can mean missed rent. Illness becomes a financial threat. Planning for the future becomes difficult when the present is unpredictable. Career ladders have also changed. Loyalty no longer guarantees security. Experience doesn't always lead to advancement. Workers can be replaced quickly, regardless of how long they've contributed. As a result, many people feel disposable working harder while feeling less valued. Gig work also reshapes identity. Careers once provided purpose, pride, and community. When work becomes fragmented, so does a person's sense of progress. Instead of building something long-term, workers piece together income from multiple sources just to survive. Hustle replaces stability. This instability affects every part of life. Buying a home feels risky. Starting a family feels uncertain. Retirement feels distant. Even short-term planning becomes stressful when income isn't guaranteed. The middle class, once defined by predictability, now lives with constant financial tension. Perhaps most damaging is how normalized this has become. Younger generations are told uncertainty is normal, that instability is the price of modern work. Expectations are quietly lowered. Security is no longer assumed, it's treated as a privilege. When stable careers disappear, the middle class loses one of its strongest pillars. Without predictable work, financial security becomes fragile. And when uncertainty becomes the norm, the middle class doesn't collapse, it slowly fades, one contract at a time. Sign 7 savings replaced by credit and permanent debt. The American middle class was once defined by its ability to save. Emergency funds, modest retirement accounts, and financial cushions gave families breathing room. Savings meant resilience, the ability to handle life's surprises without collapse. Today, that foundation has been quietly replaced by something far more fragile: credit and permanent debt. For many middle-class households, saving is no longer realistic. Rising housing costs, healthcare bills, education expenses, and everyday inflation consume income before money ever reaches a savings account. When there's nothing left at the end of the month, savings disappear first. What replaces them isn't comfort, it's borrowing. Credit cards, personal loans, financing plans, and buy now pay later services have become survival tools rather than conveniences. Families don't use credit to get ahead. They use it to stay afloat. Groceries, car repairs, medical bills, and even basic utilities are increasingly paid for with borrowed money. Debt becomes normalized, even unavoidable. This shift changes how people think. Instead of asking, "Can I afford this?" the question becomes, "Can I handle the monthly payment?" That mindset traps households in long-term obligations where interest quietly drains future income. The more debt accumulates, the harder it becomes to escape. Progress slows. Stress grows. The emotional cost is heavy. Debt creates constant anxiety and silent shame. Middle-class identity has long been tied to independence and control. Permanent debt erodes both. People may appear stable on the surface, working full-time, paying bills, but underneath, they are financially exposed. One missed paycheck or unexpected expense can trigger collapse. Without savings, resilience disappears. Emergencies become crises. Choices become limited. People delay medical care, avoid career risks, and stay in unhealthy situations because they cannot afford disruption. Debt doesn't just restrict money, it restricts freedom. When an entire class replaces savings with credit, the problem is no longer individual behavior. It is structural failure. A middle class without savings is a middle class without protection. And when survival depends on borrowing, stability becomes an illusion, one interest charge at a time. Sign 6 two-income households still struggling to survive. There was a time in America when a single income could support a family. One job paid the bills, bought a home, and allowed for modest savings. Over time, that model disappeared, and two-income households became the norm. Today, even that isn't enough. In many middle-class families, both adults work full-time and still struggle to stay financially stable. Two paychecks no longer represent progress, they represent survival. Rising housing costs, healthcare expenses, childcare, transportation, and debt have absorbed nearly every dollar of additional income. What was once extra has become essential. This reality creates constant pressure. Parents juggle long hours, overlapping schedules, and chronic exhaustion just to keep up. Time with family becomes scarce. Stress becomes routine. Despite working more than previous generations, many families feel less secure than their parents ever did. Childcare alone exposes how fragile the system has become. In many areas, the cost rivals rent or a mortgage, forcing parents into impossible decisions: career advancement versus family stability. Some work simply to afford the care that allows them to keep working. The risk is also higher. When both incomes are required, there is no margin for error. A job loss, illness, or reduced hours can immediately destabilize the household. What once would have been a setback becomes a crisis. Stability now depends on everything going right at the same time. Emotionally, this reshapes expectations. Families no longer plan for growth, they plan for endurance. Vacations disappear, savings shrink. The future feels conditional. The middle class, once defined by predictability and balance, becomes defined by constant effort and anxiety. Perhaps most telling is how normalized this struggle has become. Young adults grow up expecting exhaustion. Society treats burnout as ambition and instability as normal. Standards quietly drop. When two incomes still can't provide security, the problem isn't effort, it's structure. And when the system demands more work for less stability, the middle class doesn't collapse dramatically. It wears down slowly until survival replaces progress as the goal. Sign 5 college education, becoming a financial trap. College education was once sold as the safest ladder to a better life. Work hard, get a degree, and financial stability would follow. But for millions today, that promise has quietly collapsed. Instead of opening doors, college is increasingly becoming a financial trap, one that locks people into decades of debt with no guarantee of security on the other side. Tuition costs have exploded far faster than wages. Students are told to invest in themselves, yet that investment often begins adulthood with crushing student loans before a first paycheck ever arrives. Many graduates owe tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, not for luxury, but simply for the chance to compete in the job market. What makes this trap especially dangerous is that student debt is uniquely unforgiving. It can't be discharged easily. It follows people across careers, marriages, and even retirement, and it shapes life decisions in silent but powerful ways. The job market no longer rewards degrees the way it once did. A bachelor's degree has become the new high school diploma, expected, but no longer exceptional. Graduates frequently find themselves underemployed, working jobs that never required a degree in the first place, while still being required to make monthly loan payments. Advanced degrees, once seen as a solution, often deepen the problem by adding more debt without proportionate income gains. This financial burden delays major life milestones. Homeownership gets pushed further out of reach. Starting a family feels risky. Entrepreneurship becomes nearly impossible when loan payments are non-negotiable. Even career choices are constrained, forcing people to chase income instead of purpose, simply to stay afloat. Perhaps the most painful part is the emotional toll. Many graduates feel betrayed, not because education lacks value, but because the system oversold certainty and undersold risk. When success doesn't follow sacrifice, the result is shame, anxiety, and self-blame, even though the problem is structural. Education should empower people, not financially imprison them. But until costs align with outcomes and alternatives are treated with equal respect, college will continue to function less like a ladder and more like a debt-powered illusion that too many only recognize after it's too late. Sign 4 healthcare bills creating long-term debt. Healthcare was once seen as a safety net, something meant to protect families during their most vulnerable moments. Today, for millions of people, it has become a financial landmine. A single illness, accident, or unexpected diagnosis can trigger long-term debt that reshapes a person's entire future. Medical bills are uniquely dangerous because they often arrive without warning. You don't plan to get sick, have a medical emergency, or receive a life-altering diagnosis. Yet when it happens, the costs pile up: fast ambulance rides, emergency room visits, tests, procedures, medications, follow-ups. Even people with insurance are not protected the way they believe. High deductibles, co-pays, out-of-network charges, and coverage denials leave patients responsible for massive bills they never anticipated. What turns these bills into long-term debt is their timing. Healthcare costs often hit when someone is already vulnerable, unable to work, missing income, or facing recovery. Credit cards, payment plans, and medical loans become the only option. Over time, interest accumulates, balances grow, and what began as a health crisis becomes a permanent financial one. Medical debt doesn't just drain bank accounts. It limits life choices. People delay buying homes, avoid starting businesses, or skip further education because monthly medical payments follow them for years. Credit scores suffer, making borrowing more expensive or impossible. In some cases, people avoid seeking future medical care altogether, fearing another bill they can't afford, turning financial stress into a health risk itself. The psychological toll is just as heavy. Constant calls, bills, and reminders create anxiety and shame, even though illness is not a moral failure. Many people blame themselves for something entirely outside their control. This quiet stress affects relationships, mental health, and overall quality of life. Perhaps the most alarming shift is how normalized this has become. Medical debt is now one of the leading causes of bankruptcy, not because people were irresponsible, but because survival itself has a price tag. A system meant to heal ends up trapping people financially long after the physical wounds have healed. When healthcare creates debt instead of security, it signals a deeper problem, one where staying alive and staying financially stable are no longer guaranteed to go together. Sign 3 living, one paycheck away from financial disaster, has become one of the clearest warning signs that the American middle class is eroding. For millions of households, income covers expenses just barely, with nothing left over. Rent or mortgage, utilities, groceries, insurance, transportation, and minimum debt payments consume nearly every dollar. When the paycheck stops, even briefly, everything begins to unravel. This level of financial fragility means that a single unexpected event can trigger a crisis. A car repair, a medical bill, reduced work hours, or a short-term layoff can instantly push a household into debt. There is no cushion, no margin for error. What once would have been an inconvenience now becomes a threat to housing, food security, and basic stability. What makes this situation especially dangerous is that it affects people who appear fine on the surface. Many have jobs, degrees, and full schedules. They are not unemployed or reckless spenders. They are doing everything society told them to do, working hard, paying bills, following the rules, yet still living on the edge. This disconnect creates frustration and quiet fear, because the problem isn't personal failure, it's structural pressure. The paycheck-to-paycheck cycle also reshapes behavior. People delay medical care, ignore maintenance issues, and avoid taking risks that could improve their future, such as switching careers or starting a business. Every decision becomes defensive, focused on survival rather than growth. Over time, this limits upward mobility and locks families into long-term insecurity. Stress becomes a constant companion. Financial anxiety doesn't turn off after work hours. It affects sleep, mental health, relationships, and productivity. Parents feel the pressure most intensely, knowing that one disruption could affect their children's stability. The emotional toll compounds the financial one. Perhaps most alarming is how normalized this reality has become. Living one paycheck away from disaster is no longer viewed as a temporary phase. It's become a permanent condition for a large portion of the population. When stability depends entirely on the next direct deposit, the promise of the middle-class security, predictability, and progress begins to disappear. This is not just about money. It's about the loss of breathing room, dignity, and the ability to plan a future without fear of collapse. Sign to homeownership becoming unreachable for working families. Homeownership, once considered the cornerstone of the American middle class, is rapidly becoming unreachable for working families. For decades, owning a home symbolized stability, financial progress, and a sense of belonging. Today, that promise feels increasingly out of reach, not because people stopped wanting it, but because the economic ladder has been pulled higher than wages can climb. Housing prices have surged far faster than incomes. In many cities and suburbs, even modest homes now carry price tags that require six-figure salaries, large down payments, and near-perfect credit. For working families earning average incomes, saving for a down payment while paying rent, healthcare, childcare, and debt feels almost impossible. Rent itself has become so expensive that it consumes the very money people once used to save for a home. Mortgage requirements have also tightened. Higher interest rates mean that even those who can afford a down payment face monthly payments that stretch budgets to the breaking point. A home that looked affordable a few years ago now costs hundreds or even thousands more per month. This locks many families out before they can even compete. The result is a growing divide between owners and renters. Those who already own homes build equity as prices rise, while renters watch from the sidelines as ownership drifts further away each year. This gap isn't just financial, it's generational. Many young families now assume they may never own a home, reshaping expectations and long-term planning. This shift also affects community stability. Homeownership once anchored neighborhoods, schools, and local economies. When families are forced into long-term renting, often with frequent moves, roots become harder to establish. Children change schools more often, communities feel more transient, and long-term investment in local areas declines. What makes this especially painful is that many working families are doing everything right. They work full-time jobs, budget carefully, and avoid unnecessary spending. Yet the math simply doesn't work. Homeownership is no longer a reward for responsibility, it's increasingly a privilege tied to timing. inheritance, or high-income careers. When owning a home becomes unreachable for the people who keep the economy running, it signals something deeper than a housing crisis. It reveals a middle class losing access to one of its most defining pillars: security, stability, and a tangible stake in the future. Sign 1: rising cost of living while wages stay flat. Rising living costs paired with stagnant wages sit at the very heart of the disappearing American middle class. This is the pressure point where everyday life quietly becomes unsustainable, not through one dramatic collapse, but through constant, grinding strain. While prices rise almost everywhere, paychecks for millions of workers barely move, creating a widening gap between what people earn and what life actually costs. Housing is often the first place this imbalance is felt. Rent, property taxes, utilities, and maintenance costs have climbed steadily, even in areas once considered affordable. At the same time, wages for teachers, retail workers, office staff, service employees, and even many skilled professionals have failed to keep pace. What once required 25 to 30% of income now eats up nearly half for many families. Food, transportation, insurance, childcare, and healthcare follow the same pattern. Grocery bills rise each year, gas prices swing unpredictably, and insurance premiums quietly increase with little explanation. Childcare costs now rival mortgage payments in some regions. These are not luxury expenses, they are the basic costs of staying afloat. When wages stay flat, families are forced into survival mode. Raises, if they come at all, are often absorbed instantly by higher rent or bills. The idea of getting ahead fades, replaced by constant calculation. Which bill can wait? Which expense must be postponed? Which emergency might push everything over the edge? This isn't poor financial planning, it's math that no longer works. What makes this trend especially damaging is its psychological toll. Financial stress becomes permanent, not temporary. People work longer hours, take on side jobs, or dip into savings just to maintain the same standard of living they had years ago. Vacations disappear, retirement contributions shrink, emergency funds vanish. Over time, this erosion changes identity. The middle class was never just about income, it was about security, predictability, and the belief that effort would be rewarded. When wages stall while costs soar, that belief collapses. People don't suddenly fall into poverty. They slide downward inch by inch, year by year. Rising living costs without rising wages aren't just an economic issue, they're a warning sign. When hard work no longer guarantees stability, the foundation of the middle class begins to crack, and the future becomes something to fear rather than plan for. The middle class didn't vanish overnight. It didn't collapse with a single law or a single crisis. It eroded slowly, quietly through rising costs, shrinking security, and broken promises. People didn't stop working hard. They just stopped being rewarded for it. What you've seen in this video isn't failure. It's endurance. Millions of Americans adapting, sacrificing, and surviving in a system that no longer protects them. The question now isn't whether the middle class is disappearing. It's whether we're willing to acknowledge it and decide what comes next. If this video made you feel seen, share it. If these signs felt familiar, you're not alone. And if you want more stories that explain the world without filters, subscribe to Mindrix. Because understanding reality is the first step toward changing it.